begin today, I'm going to show 5 pieces which are important to my practice and give an example of the kind of work I was making up to the commencement of this practice-based PhD. Then after that, I'll begin to unpack a little where I am now and show a series of drawings I've created based on my research. So the first piece I want to talk about is Sorry Not Sorry. This piece was made while staying on residency at Fingal County Council's The Resort Residency. The residency is located in Linder's Mobile Home Park next to St. Ita's Psychiatric Asylum. This asylum, built in 1896, was the largest building of its time in Ireland, and at one point housed up to 1,600 patients with 500 staff. There is an unmarked grave near the asylum where the patients were buried. Normally, a patient did not leave St. Ita's once you went in. I found this lack of a marker, a headstone, to be yet another example of the horrors of institutionalism and state-run services that the Republic of Ireland holds in her heart, the embarrassment of having someone in an institution, and the necessity for secrecy. I had a strong response to this graveyard, with local historian Pater Bates estimating approximately 5,000 people were buried there. In 1961, Ireland set the bar for having the highest proportion of its citizens interned in psychiatric asylums, 1 in every 70 adults, even ahead of the Soviet Union. As the largest institution in Ireland for long-term psychiatric care, the majority of people in St. Ita's ended up in this small plot. The performance happened in the graveyard one night close to Halloween. Through my research, I discovered that there were weekly film screenings for the patients as early as the 1940s. I wanted to project a film for them. Buried facing the sky, I needed a screen that would float, capturing the light from the projector pointing up at the stars. But what if the stories from the past are too large for the screen? Speaking with people who remembered the institution, I was most struck by the subjectiveness of memory, my empathy for these undocumented, anonymous patients, and how I manipulated the stories of St. Ita's in relation to my own experiences, my own present, how I brayed with criticality or with praise when various elements of life at St. Ita's were revealed to me. And yet, this is a past that I have no claim to. It's something that happened once, and I was not there. In projecting the word sorry, I'm apologizing to my kite for documenting it. Its dark dance with the wind illuminated by my voyeurism and manipulated into a sculpture like some selfish souvenir. Although at the same time, I'm not sorry, because if I didn't document it, then you'd have nothing to look at. I also wanted to apologize to the patients who are buried in the unmarked graves, who are incarcerated in St. Ita's for the wrong reasons, who suffered under inhumane treatments, who had to deal with mental illness and stigma. A kite as the object that floats, but is also controlled, similar to an artwork cast out into the world. It can soar or it can sink, and a kite is a victim too. I showed them a film of the All-Ireland dance champion from 1963, the image that Ireland wanted to project of itself at the time. The dancer and his surrounding audience all stand together on the stage, facing the camera. The patients of St. Ita's, who existed on the periphery of Irish society, would not have been present on that stage. It was a different Ireland, where equality held a different currency. This dancer also dances on my kite, his shoes stepping down on an object that wants to soar in the present, showing how nothing can exist today without some stamp of bygone pasts. We may not empathize with the Ireland of long ago, but we must recognize it as an inherent part of our identity if we want to move forward. And so I have a short clip of the film. tell you about is called Defiance Roof Without Walls. This large floor work was placed at the entrance to the exhibition, placing the spectator in an ethical dilemma. Walk on the work and you'll destroy it, or don't walk on the work, but don't see the exhibition. I staged this dilemma in order to create a hyper-awareness of the viewer's relationship to the work on display and how their presence is both necessary and destructive. The work was originally created for the exhibition Post-Peace, curated by Katja Krupenikova as part of her winning the Young European Curator Award. It was originally planned to take place in Akbank Sanat, Istanbul in March 2016, but in an act of censorship, the show was cancelled 5 days before opening. A year later, the exhibition was staged at the Kunstverein Stuttgart and also traveled to Nest in Den Haag. This work is part of the Irish Arts Council collection. So to read you the exhibition text, we have entered the era of post-peace, to which the past posits posts pieces to itself. One such communique, inscribed on a humble roof tile, silently declares defiance. This, along with the Sersta Éireann logo, was assiduously inscribed on all products of Irish labour during the economic war that immediately precipitated Ireland's liberation proper in 1938 from 800 years of British occupation. Ireland refused to repay the debt that had been forced upon it by Britain as a condition of leaving the United Kingdom. Britain responded to this turnaround by choking Irish trade with obscene import duties, effectively paralysing the fledgling Irish economy. Understanding economic servitude to be the complete anathema to political independence, the Irish labour classes strove on, bearing their agony with pride, carving defiance into all they created. The Republic was finally free, financially and ideologically, from all colonial influence. Caught gratefully lapping debt from the heels of bureaucratic madams in EU pleasure dungeons, how should Ireland's present self respond to a love letter received from its past, which is dedicated to a creature so unholy like itself? And how the tables have turned as British defiance prepares to leave the EU's single market, subverting the power play or repeating history as farce. In this work, I examine the legacy of political idealism by recasting the roof tiles as floor tiles and placing them on the ground for your feet to stamp down. Pirouette 2019 is a site-specific interaction performed at the Hugh Lane Gallery. A ballerina who wants to do a pirouette, one simple action taking a few seconds. Surrounded by viewers and actors acting as viewers, I give a short introduction to put the pirouette in context, but there are interjections to argue about how the viewers should act, the relevance of the pirouette, and the role of Hugh Lane in facilitating the performance. Some of the actors mention The Playboy of the Western World, a performance which provoked riots and audience disruption during its first run at the Abbey Theatre in 1907. Hugh Lane, whose aunt was Lady Gregory, was one of a group of men drafted in as clackers to cheer the performance in the face of audience disruptions. Some of the acted audience will be in favor of this performance, wanting it to happen, and some will want to stop it from happening. In that way, they are thought of as clackers, both for and against the pirouette. They will discuss the etymology of the term audience, which comes from audio, and that before being known as spectators, witnesses to performances were once called auditors. This diverts the debate to whether they should be listening to the pirouette or if they should cover their ears to watch it. The Pull. This work was created in the midst of conversation leading up to the Repeal the Eighth campaign, the death of Savita Halappanavar, and the Tuam Baby scandal. In order to understand more fully the experience of the Catholic faith, I embarked on the pilgrimage of Loch Derg in Donegal, the origin of purgatory, according to the Catholic Church, found on a small island in the northwest of Ireland. It draws up to 300,000 people each year, pre-corona times, for a 3-day retreat with no food, water, or sleep. In researching the pilgrimage, I found poems written by Kavanagh, Heaney, and Devlin. I wanted to write about my own experience that expressed my rage at the institutionalism of faith and the atrocities committed by this institution. Referencing Salome, Savita, Anima, and the Kathleen, the poem was re-edited into a performance. This work was performed in Wisła, Gdansk at the Alternativa Contemporary Art Festival and at Temple Bar Galleries and Studios as part of the exhibition My Brilliant Friend. A rope was hung, stretching up to 30 meters high. A woman, aerialist Elaine McCaig, ascended and descended this rope, responding to my voice as I recited the poem. This poem must always be read in conjunction with a woman hanging from a rope with no safety harness, such is the precarity that the female role has been treated throughout time. The viewer's experience of the performance is usually tense, the aural live reading with loud, unrelating words that summon the woman to fall, teamed with the visual of the woman balancing tentatively, surviving. I wanted to create a hypertension that is evident throughout my work. And so I have a short video clip of the performance from Temple Bar Galleries.
A little fly, usually defying gravity, landed dead on the letter X of my keyboard. Inexorable down to death's law, exonerated from her role in Sorry's hall. She must have died mid-air, her dot of a shadow sighing until she fell into it with a soft flump. Legs buzzing into labour position as death was delivered amid crushed wings, a fresh black mass of lifeless matter, one shell, a blowout. I was reading about poetry and then I lost my breath. Oh no, did I again? I was reading about the past when a fly landed dead on the letter X of my keyboard, bringing me into the present, and then I lost my breath. I was reading about the past when a fly landed dead on the letter X of my keyboard, bringing me into the present, and then I lost my breath. I was reading about the past when a fly landed dead on the letter X of my laptop, bringing me into the present, and then I lost my breath. I was reading about the Kathleen when a fly landed dead on the letter X of my laptop, bringing me into the present, and then I lost my breath. I was reading about the Salome when a fly landed dead on the letter X of my laptop, bringing me into the present, and then I lost my breath. I was reading about the Salvita when a fly landed dead on the letter X of my laptop, bringing me into the present, and toes touch the rock. Stretch arches falling to the downing heel, ghosts pulling prayers, lulling paucity. She's bending the other knee, swinging the toe, soul pleading, pen pointing, imploring Shane's veracity. As such, a tough, a look, a moan, as much a kiss, a touch, alone, and when our then a chance is blown, and on, and on, a man again, and then amen, a gin again, an end, again, toes touch the rock, stretching arches falling to the downing heel, ghosts pulling prayers, lulling paucity. She bends the other knee, bending the swing, soul pleading, penning, pointing, imploring Shane's veracity.
Okay, So the next piece is called Choke. Choke was created out of a body of work that I built up during a 2-year residency at the HISC in Ghent, focusing on how we act as audience members and the cultural baggage we bring with us as we embark on visiting an exhibition. I began to make work examining the ways in which we observe each other and the ways we observe art, creating a sculptural diorama of situations or a mini set for a play of infinite possibilities. The piece worked as a conversation generator, a what would you do of sorts, so to engage with the work as a work and as a place where you can open up about your viewer anxieties. The performance Choke was performed in the Vanderboort building in Brussels in late 2017. The actors sat directly opposite the entrance to the exhibition. They were asked to perform as bored audience members experiencing the worst performance they'd ever seen. Through this act of subversion, the spectator became the actor, finding themselves upon a stage with lights shining on them and a collection of faux audience members judging them. This situation served to highlight the one-sided relationship between the viewer and the artwork. If the artwork could interact with the viewer, how would it act? So, I'm doing a PhD in my practice at KU Leuven and Luca Ghent, both in Belgium, focusing on how the lines between the performer and spectator have blurred and how this impacts contemporary art and performance. This is the center of Brussels right now. And this is Brussels in July 2019, when I was making secret performances for the live cam as part of my research. I was based in Brussels until March when the pandemic hit. And since then, my research into the live viewer experience has had, like everyone else, to move into the realm of teleworking, the internet, and socially distanced experiences. Working through written text, performance, and visual mixed media, I'm sifting through historical and contemporary references to draw conclusions relating to the role of the viewer in contemporary visual art and questioning how performance can set up dynamics which provoke the spectator into an awareness of their spectatorial role. We live in an age where the boundaries between viewer and performer have never been so close. We are content generators. We view, we think, we respond, and we publish. So to list some of my personal interests and pillars going into the PhD, one, the binary of active versus passive and how we define quality of engagement, the risk of either the artwork castrating itself through politically engaged social activism with an inability to actually act on its findings. Are there examples of art having the power to implement social change in a practical way? Versus an artwork being a closed utopian fantasy with no political engagement at all. Both of these situations, for me, create inferior art. It is the position in between, the blurred boundary that gives wings to inspiring art pieces. Telling the viewer how to act. The trend in the majority of contemporary practices to explain in an almost corporate manner how to engage with the work and what to think. Was there a moment when this level of simplification was not necessary to the proliferation of visual art? Has the over-reliance on government bursaries in Europe led to a type of art explanation that removes all the joy, mystery, and respect once afforded the artistic text? And here I'm thinking of Banks' project Facts Back in the early 2000s, when they used to copy edit artist statements.
All the ballerinas say they could have had her any day. They only let her get away. Out of kindness, I suppose. All the ballerinas say they could have had her any day. They only let her get away. Out of kindness, I suppose.
So in my research, I'm trailing through art movements and manifestos from the 20th century to today in order to trace the legacy of active versus passive artistic engagement and how relations between the viewer and the artwork were rearranged, realigned, and recoded by almost every artist or artist group, from the Futurists in 1910, Waking Up the Sleeping Spectator, to Antonin Artaud's Theatre of Cruelty in the 30s, Artist Placement Group in the 60s, to Buryard's Relational Aesthetics in the 90s, in an attempt to understand the roots and subtleties of today's post-truth neoliberal lockdown nightmare. How are we redefining the act of looking and engaging with art, keeping in mind that the majority of art and performance institutions reopened with social distancing at the forefront of their policy, and yet were one of the first industries to close again with the new lockdown? The risk of allegory in artworks, which condescends, preaches, and strives to show a path to betterness. Art is not responsible for bettering, which leads to ethics as aesthetics. Claire Bishop gives an example in Artificial Health, page 22, of curator Maria Lind, who is not interested in critiquing or showing art, rather using art as a means for creating and recreating new relations between people. In this way, she diminishes the value of Thomas Hirschhorn's work for being exhibitionist and valorizes Oda Progessi's work, Fail #Better, because of the high level of collaboration and community it established. In this way, there is no artwork being critiqued. It is the method by which the artwork is created, the relations, the communication, the social. This tendency to judge and observe how we act in relation to one another is crucial to my PhD, as it shows a turn in the trend whereby artists are telling themselves how to act instead of telling the viewer. Although, however much I enjoy them not telling the viewer how to act, I'm bugged by the idea that an artwork is valued on how ethically nice the artist is in making the work rather than the artwork. So as you can see, tensions between quality and equality, singular and collective authorship, ongoing struggle to find artistic equivalents for political positions are the red lines through my research. And now for a quote from Claire Bishop's book, Artificial Health, page 39. Instead of obeying a super-egoic injunction to make ameliorative art, the most striking, moving, and memorable forms of participation are produced when artists act upon a gnawing social curiosity without the incapacitating restrictions of guilt. At present, the discursive criteria of participatory and socially engaged art is drawn from a tacit analogy between anti-capitalism and the Christian good soul. It is an ethical reasoning that fails to accommodate the aesthetic or to understand it as an autonomous realm of experience. In this perspective, there is no space for perversity, paradox, and negation. Operations as crucial to aesthesis as dissensus is to the political. Page 284. By using people as a medium, participatory art has always had a double ontological status. It is both an event in the world and that once removed from it. As such, has the capacity to communicate on two levels, and to spectators the paradoxes that are repressed in everyday discourse, and to elicit perverse, disturbing, and pleasurable experiences that enlarge our capacity to imagine the world and our relations. But to reach the second level requires a mediate third term, an object, an image, a story, a film, even a spectacle that permits this experience to have a purchase in the public imaginary. Participatory art is not a privileged political medium, nor a ready-made solution to the society of the spectacle, but it is as uncertain and precarious as democracy itself. Neither are legitimized in advance, but need continually to be performed and tested in every specific context. So for me, I'm interested in an art that does not need participation to justify it, but is concerned with how we are all performing in relation to it. In this sense, it is participatory, but grounded in a profound sense of embarrassment, anxiety, or nervousness, because it mirrors the viewer's response, challenging the legacy of engagement and viewership. This still opens up a new avenue for authorship and cultural expressions. The necessity to root the work in political upheavals or topically relevant issues evaporates, but not in the same sense as beholdership from Michael Fried or abstract expressionism. Rather, the aesthetics are important, but also the politics of the miniverse you create for the experience of the work. In this way, a merging of aesthetic sensibilities and participatory performances work to form a new way of engaging and thinking about and talking about art. In regards to my own terminology, for the person or people who engage with my art, I've chosen the term bezoeker, which comes from the Dutch meaning visitor. For me, when a person is engaging with my art physically, cognitively, or spiritually, I think of them as sharing time with the work, time that comes and goes like a visitor. Etymologically, it means be seeker, or translating as visitor, caller, guest, frequenter, or attendant. And so finally, I want to show you a series of drawings that I've been creating as part of my PhD in lockdown. This essay of drawings offers a subjective genealogy of risk through seminal performance pieces from the last 100 and so years that challenge viewership through risk of confinement, infiltration, and alienation, and an ethics of blurred boundary. This research has come about as part of my research where I focus on methods of performance and modes of viewership, bodily proximity, and modes of performance that push the act of viewing to new and uncharted territory. I've chosen the pieces because each one, for their own reasons, challenges the perceived norms of the day with a common rage, frustration, and immediacy. While selecting the pieces, I was also acutely aware of how none of these works were possible to perform during the spring-summer of 2020. So number one, the 26th of January 1907, the riots at the premiere of The Playboy of the Western World at the Abbey Theatre Dublin, provoked by nationalist sentiment. Hugh Lane, nephew of Lady Gregory, arriving with his Trinity peers as the counter-attack. The Clackers. 2. 1910, Kandinsky, the gallery owner in Munich, saying that he had to wipe the spit off Kandinsky's canvases every evening. Also worth noting that this is the same year Kandinsky created his first abstract painting, entitled First Abstract Watercolor. 3. The 12th of December 1913, Futurists, someone presenting a loaded gun to Marinetti and telling him to shoot himself. Marinetti replying that if he deserved a bullet of lead, then this spectator deserved a bullet of shit. Number 4, 14th of July 1916, Hugo Ball performs Ogaji Berry Bimba in Zurich at the Cabaret Voltaire. 5. The 9th of May 1921, Pirandello and his daughter having to leave through the back door of Teatro Verdi after the premiere of 6 Characters in Search of an Author to avoid the pelting of the vegetables and the very angry audience. 6. Flash forward to Lebel bringing the audience into the theater through the back door and, coincidentally, Andre Breton's front door, to a Parisian happening that caused Lucienne Goldman to have a heart attack. Shirley Goldfarb, a naked soprano, descending from the balcony and urinating on the audience. 7. 13th of May, 1921, the Dada mock trial of Maurice Barr in Paris, an influential writer for many of the Dadaists. He changed his ideology over the course of his career, becoming more and more conservative, something which the Dadaists could never forgive him for. The Dadaists held a mock trial for Barr, with the audience performing as jury. In the end, they sentenced him to 20 years hard labor for his shift to the right. 8. The 9th of April, 1950, the Notre Dame affair, Paris. Radical members of the letrist group infiltrated Easter Sunday Mass at the Notre Dame Cathedral, which was being broadcast live all over France. Michel Moore, disguised as a Dominican friar, approached the pulpit and delivered a live sermon declaring God is dead. 9. While performing her seminal piece, Meet Joy, in Paris, a male member of the audience attacks Carolee Schneemann, strangling her. The performance involved a series of dancers who were very lightly clothed, rolling around in animal meat and blood and kissing each other a lot. The other viewers think that this male member attacking Carolee Schneemann is actually part of the performance until 2 women interject to save her life. 10. In June 1968, Gunther Bruce began serving a 6-month prison sentence for the crime of degrading symbols of the state after an action in Vienna in which he simultaneously masturbated, covered his body with his own feces, and sang the Austrian national anthem, and later fled the country to avoid a second arrest. 11. The 9th of October 1968. Attendees to the solo exhibition El Encierro of artist Graziella Carnevale waited for something to happen in the sparse space. Eventually, when someone tried to leave, they noticed that the door was locked. Everyone was trapped inside. The attendees remained trapped for a few hours until someone got so angry with this claustrophobic situation that someone smashed the window and they all left. 12. 1970, Adrian Piper, Catalysis 3. In the early 1970s, Piper staged a series of unannounced performances on the streets of New York. Catalysis created a space of social alienation as Piper donned a variety of states, for example, covering herself in wet paint and holding a wet paint sign. She viewed the reaction of passers-by as the catalyst, which, via the photographic documentation, challenges the viewer's perception of how a Black woman is treated by society at large. 13. 1972. The story goes that Harold Zeman saw a video of Kader walking around Paris with one of his Barr de Bois Rund sculptures, and was reminded of another phallocentric Romanian artist, Brancusi, who apparently walked from Germany to Paris after World War I. Zeman wanted Kader to perform a reversal and invited him to participate in Documenta 5 on the stipulation that he walk from Paris to Kassel with one of his signature Barr sculptures. For most artists, this is a career-defining moment. Kader, refusing to be shoeboxed or typecast just because of some aesthetic or birthplace similarities, faked his journey and arrived by train instead. When Zeman found out, there was a huge argument and his invitation was revoked and he was barred from the exhibition. 14. January 1972, Vito Acconci, seedbed. In an otherwise empty gallery, a ramp was constructed over the floor, extending from the center of the gallery to the back wall. During the times the work was activated, on Wednesdays and Saturdays, Acconci positioned himself in the confined space under the ramp and repeatedly masturbated, using the sound of the visitors walking above him to fuel his sexual fantasies. He spoke into a microphone, and his unanastic monologue was conveyed to the visitors through speakers installed in the corners of the gallery. Acconci has described the performance. My voice comes up from under the floor. You're pushing your cunt down on my mouth. You're pressing your tits down on my cock. 15. 30th of September 1979. Tetching Hish locks himself in his Manhattan studio for 1 year, punching a time clock every hour on the hour, 24 hours a day. 16. 1981. Lorraine O'Grady, Mademoiselle Bourgeoisie Noire, New York. O'Grady developed the persona Mademoiselle Bourgeoise Noire as a way to challenge the racial segregation in the art world. She invaded the opening at the New Museum of Contemporary Art, wearing her costume, a white dress, a sash, and a crown, complete with a cat of 9 tails made from rope and white chrysanthemums. After clearing some space among the crowd, she whipped herself with this object, quote unquote, the whip that made plantations move. 17. Gianni Motti. Gianni Motti infiltrated the United Nations 53rd session of the Commission on Human Rights in New York, 1997. He took a place where no one was sitting, Indonesia. Allegedly, he gave a talk on ethnic minorities, rallied some Americans with an impassioned speech, and they all walked out together. 18. Andrea Fraser, Little Frank and His Carp, 1998. Andrea Fraser takes an audio tour at the Guggenheim Bilbao. As she listens to the male voice explain the architecture in patronizing and overtly sexual terms, she begins to rub and touch herself on the walls. Museum goers gather around, shocked and bewildered at this woman. The more the speaker describes the architecture in sexual terms, the more excited she gets. 19. Anibel Lopez, El Préstamo, 2000. Guatemala City. Upon arriving at the opening, the viewer takes a glass of wine. There's nothing on show bar a small piece with text. The text informs the viewer that earlier that day, the artist sought out a man on the street of middle-class appearance and robbed him at gunpoint. The victim's money was used to fund the exhibition, the invitations, and the wine, therefore turning him into an unwilling sponsor of visual arts. 2000, number 20, year 2000, Christopher Schlegensief, Please Love Austria. Installed in front of the Opera House in Vienna, Schlegensief created a Big Brother-style week-long performance where asylum seekers lived in a converted shipping container, their every movement recorded and streamed online. Every day, Austrian citizens had the chance to vote out their least favorite asylum seeker, who would then apparently be deported. And the final one, number 21, 2007, Critical Art Ensemble, Target Deception, Leipzig, Germany. In restaging a US military biological warfare test from 1950, a team of human guinea pigs volunteered to stand in formation around the American consulate in Leipzig. A critical art ensemble member climbed to the top of the town hall tower, and released a vapor towards them, which contained a strain of non-harmful bacteria. Later on, the volunteer corps were tested to see if strains of the bacteria were present on their clothes. 2 out of many tested positive. So there's a mix of reasons I'm drawn to these performances. Some pieces unite in feminist action to tackle the problematic relationship between the church, the state, and the patriarchy. Some deal with infiltration, deception, and truth in a way that uses public mischief as commentary on social justice, racism, and social discord. This graphic essay is a letter to a post-pandemic world where assembly and indeed our very bodies now issue an unacceptable pitch of risk. So that's everything.